11-year-old Tio would rather play video games than do homework. He lives with his older brother Oscar and their grandmother, and he's already figured out an easy way to avoid schoolwork: bribe the smartest kid with video games and let someone else do it. Tio is also the kind of kid who never takes the normal way into his own house. Instead, he climbs up a drain pipe and sneaks through his bedroom window. One afternoon, that plan goes wrong, and he scrapes up his knee. Oscar patches him up with hydrogen peroxide, once again reminding his little brother that using the front door would be a lot easier. Later, Tio starts going through their mother's old research files. She had disappeared years ago, leaving behind nothing but questions and unfinished work. Among the papers, Tio finds a photograph showing her standing at a strange location. Curious, he goes there himself. While looking around, Tio finishes a banana and casually tosses the peel over the edge. Then, it disappears. No impact, no sound. It simply vanishes in midair. Tio stares at the empty space, completely confused. Maybe it was a coincidence. So he grabs one of his roller skates and throws it into the same spot. It disappears too. Now Tio knows this isn't normal. He may have just discovered a time portal. Excited, Tio races home to tell Oscar, but Oscar isn't impressed. In fact, he's already angry because Tio has been tearing pages out of their mother's research books to make paper rockets. To Tio, those papers are just old notes. To Oscar, they're the last pieces of their mother's work. Their mother didn't simply disappear. She was a brilliant scientist who had been researching time travel before she vanished without a trace. Tio believes she probably left them. Oscar refuses to accept that. He's convinced she became trapped somewhere in time. That's why he's determined to become a scientist himself, so one day he can finish her research and find their mother. The argument gets worse until their grandmother calls them down for dinner. The brothers immediately pretend everything is fine, but the moment she's gone, the fight starts again. This time, Oscar says something that really gets under Tio's skin. Angry and wanting revenge, Tio grabs Oscar's beloved pet turtle and throws it inside. The second it disappears, Tio realizes he may have gone too far. Oscar is devastated. He searches the house, the yard, everywhere he can think of. When the turtle still doesn't appear, he even puts up missing posters around the neighborhood. Watching his brother fall apart finally gets through to Tio. He knows he caused this, and now he has only one way to fix it. He has to go in after the turtle. Tio takes a breath and jumps into the portal. Instead of falling through empty space, he lands in a strange hidden world, filled with everything that has ever been thrown into the portal. Tio quickly grabs it and makes his way back home. He quietly returns the turtle to its tank, hoping Oscar will never find out what really happened. Then Tio goes to sleep. He thinks everything is finally back to normal, but when he wakes up the next morning, nothing is normal anymore. Tio's still asleep when he hears movement. Oscar's already up, dressed, heading out, except Oscar isn't 11 anymore. He's a grown man. Turns out that portal didn't just swallow objects, it swallowed time itself. Tio jumped in during 1990 and came out in 2022. Oscar's now a full-blown physics professor. Meanwhile, in that same 2022, Oscar stops by a shop owned by a man named David. David's daughter, Elena, shows up not long after. Childhood friends, the kind who grew up practically inseparable. Oscar had always had feelings for her, but he never worked up the nerve to say it out loud. Elena, meanwhile, is now divorced, with 2 kids of her own, and just so happens to teach English at the same university where Oscar teaches physics. And somewhere in the back of Oscar's mind, those old feelings for her never fully went away. Back at the house, young Tio wakes up, turtle in hand, looking for Oscar. He finds his grandmother instead, except she's aged decades and doesn't recognize him at all. That's when Oscar walks in and gets the shock of his life. He passes out cold. When he comes to, he asks the obvious question, "Is it really you?" Tio's just as lost. "Who are you?" he asks. "And how do you know my name?" "I'm your brother." Tio can't wrap his head around it. How does someone go from a kid to a grown man overnight? Slowly, it dawns on both of them. Tio really did jump straight from 1990 into 2022. Tio shows him the old photo of their mother in red, and panic sets in. He wants to go back, fast, terrified their grandmother's going to be furious if he's late. Tio heads back up to the roof and tries the same trick, tosses something over the edge. This time, it just falls. No disappearing act. Confused, he turns to Oscar for answers. Time travel doesn't work that simply. The path you took to get here isn't necessarily the path that takes you back. They're going to need to find an entirely new portal. Oscar takes him to see a senior professor, hoping for a lead. The professor's blunt. Science has come a long way by 2022. Sure, but something like an actual time portal? Not remotely possible. They walk away with nothing. Tio, meanwhile, is stunned by literally everything around him. He spots Oscar's phone and asks what it even is. Oscar explains, no cord, no dial, nothing like the phones Tio grew up with. Then Tio remembers something important. Back when he tore up their mom's research papers for paper rockets, he found a handwritten list and hid it inside a dictionary just to mess with Oscar. It might hold real clues about the portals. They ask their grandmother where that dictionary ended up. She gave it to David years ago. The next day, Oscar heads out to track down David, telling Tio to stay put. Tio, of course, doesn't listen. He wanders into a massive shopping mall, completely floored by everything modern he sees, especially a VR headset, which he tries on immediately and promptly breaks. Oscar gets a call to come pick up the damage. Literally. He has to pay for what Tio destroyed. Oscar lays down the rule clearly this time. No wandering off without telling him. The two brothers head to David's store together to track down that dictionary. David tells them it's actually back at his house. That's when Elena walks in. Tio's floored. The girl from the old photos is now a grown woman standing right in front of him. Elena spots him and asks the obvious question, who is this kid and how does he know her name? Oscar panics and lies on the spot. Tio's his cousin's son, visiting for a while. Elena buys it and invites them both back to her house. At Elena's place, Tio meets her two kids, both glued to video games light years beyond anything he's ever seen. He jumps in to play with her son, while Oscar finally digs up the dictionary. Time to head home, except Tio's having way too much fun to leave. Elena offers to drop him off later herself, but as the kids keep playing, they start teasing Tio mercilessly. He has no clue how any of this modern stuff works. Kids these days ask Alexa to tell them the time. Tio's from a world without any of it, and it shows. Back home, the search for the real portal begins. Oscar explains that his mother's list includes coordinates for several different portal locations. They visit each one, tossing objects through. Nothing happens at any of them. Oscar starts to suspect an error somewhere in his calculations and goes back to recheck everything from scratch. While he works, Tio asks him something more personal. Why does he live alone? Why no friends? And why, after everything, has he never told Alina how he feels? She's divorced now, Oscar admits without looking up, but I don't think there's really a future there for us. Tio's not buying it. Without telling anyone, he sneaks onto Oscar's phone and invites David, Elena, and the kids over for dinner that night. When they all show up, Oscar's stunned, until Tio owns up to it. Slowly, over the course of that dinner, something shifts between Oscar and Elena. The next day, Elena takes Tio shopping for new clothes. In the fitting room, Tio starts doing his usual over-the-top sports commentary bit, a habit Elena instantly recognizes. It clicks for her immediately. This isn't some random cousin's kid. This is Oscar's little brother, Tio, the one who vanished decades ago. Overwhelmed, she pulls him into a hug. How is it possible that you haven't aged a single day? Tio comes clean with the whole truth. She goes to Oscar for confirmation. He brings her up to the roof and drops a rock over the edge. This time, instead of falling, it bounces right back up. Now she believes it completely. Oscar explains there are actually 3 kinds of portals. The first sends you directly from one specific time to another. The second drops you somewhere completely random in time. And the third is the most dangerous of all. Once you go in, there's almost no way back out. Tio had used the first kind to land in 2022. Now they need to find one that can send him back. Precisely. Oscar, Tio, and Elena start researching together, day after day. Slowly, Oscar finds himself genuinely happy. Elena's becoming part of his life in a way he never expected. And more than once, he catches himself dancing around the house when no one's watching. But Elena's got a nagging fear. If sending Tio back changes the timeline, what happens to her own future? What if her kids are never born? She loves them more than anything, and the thought terrifies her. Oscar promises her he won't let anything change. Whatever happens, he'll do everything he can to keep the timeline exactly as it was. Then Tio has an idea. If he travels back in time with Elena's own kids along for the ride, that alone proves they're destined to exist. Because if they'd never been born, they couldn't have made the trip in the first place. Using clues from the research, along with help from Elena's kids, they finally crack the coordinates and locate what looks like the right portal, the one that should send Tio home to 1990. Thrilled, Tio doesn't hesitate. He dives straight into the water, where the portal sits. Elena's kids, Brenda and Nathan, jump in right behind him without thinking. When the 3 of them surface, nothing looks right. Where a city should be, there's nothing but open mountains. They've landed in the past, all right, just not the right past. It's 1949. They'd used the second kind of portal, the one that drops you somewhere completely random in time. Now Tio, Brenda, and Nathan are stranded, decades further back than planned, with no money and no working phones, and they're getting hungry fast. Brenda and Nathan come up with a plan, a fake mind-reading act, using their modern gadgets to fool a 1940s crowd. Nathan sits off to the side, Brenda closes her eyes, and Tio writes a random name on a board. Using a hidden wireless earpiece, Nathan feeds Brenda the name, and she calls it out like magic. The crowd eats it up, but it doesn't take long before local police start taking notice. Performing without a permit isn't exactly legal in 1949. The second Tio spots the police closing in, he signals the others, and all three of them bolt. But a stranger catches up to them mid-escape and hauls them off to a secret location, and suddenly, their situation just got a lot more complicated. Back in 2022, Oscar and Elena finally track down the 1990 portal entrance. Without hesitating, they grab hands and jump through together, Elena's first real experience with time travel, and it's overwhelming in every way. Meanwhile, in 1990, missing posters with Tio's face are still plastered all over the neighborhood. In 1949, the stranger brings the three kids to a group operating outside the law, a gang working against the government itself. Their leader wants to know exactly why this man brought a bunch of kids into their hideout. They know the code, the man tells him. Confused, Tio asks what code he's even talking about. Turns out, the whistle Tio used earlier to shake the police, the same one his grandmother taught him as a kid, happens to be this exact gang's secret signal. Then a young woman walks in. Tio's stomach drops. It's his grandmother, decades younger, right there in front of him. Tio learns his grandmother used to run with this very gang, which is exactly where she picked up that whistle in the first place. He doesn't dare tell anyone who she really is. Nobody would believe him anyway. He just quietly hugs her. The gang, it turns out, isn't actually the villains he expected. Sure, they're breaking the law, but their whole cause is built around helping people who need it. For now, at least, the kids are safe. Back in 1990, Oscar and Elena arrive at Oscar's childhood home, hoping to find the kids there, but the house is empty. They hear footsteps and duck out of sight. A younger version of Oscar walks in, crying, still grieving his missing little brother. Watching his own younger self like this hits present-day Oscar hard. Meanwhile, in 1949, the kids start settling into life with the gang, slowly accepting they might not find a way back. For Tio, it's a little easier. His young grandmother's right there with him. One day, he asks her to take a photo with them and to keep it safe forever. Even once you're old, get it framed. Keep it close. On the back of that photo, Tio secretly writes down the portal's coordinates, a message meant for future Oscar and Elena to find. Back in 1990, the old photo in grandmother's frame starts subtly shifting, Tio, Brenda, and Nathan slowly appearing in it. Oscar and Elena realize exactly what's happening. The kids made it to the past through some portal, just not the one they were expecting. There's only one option left. Head back to 2022, find the right coordinates, and jump straight to 1949 to bring them home. They make the trip back, then forward again, landing right where they need to be. Tio, expecting this, had already told the gang his brother would be coming for him. When Oscar arrives and lets out that same secret whistle, the gang immediately understands who he's there for. Elena is overjoyed to find her kids completely safe, but Tio refuses to go back. He's grown attached to this life. Oscar, hurt, tells him plainly, "We fight all the time, sure, but that doesn't mean we don't love each other." He tells Tio just how much of his life he's spent thinking about him since he disappeared. He doesn't want his little brother walking away from him now. That's when Tio's young grandmother steps in. Oscar's stunned seeing her, but says nothing. They still need a way back to 2022. One of the gang members offers to drive them to the portal, and it turns out that man is actually their grandfather. They finally reach the right portal home. Oscar prepares to send Tio back to 1990, but Tio hesitates. He's terrified of going back to a world where he's got nobody. "I want to stay with you," he tells Oscar. "You're kind of like a dad to me." Oscar's overcome with emotion. He pulls Tio into a hug and reminds him his younger self, back in 1990, is waiting for him too, missing him just as much. He promises that if Tio goes back and stays good, his younger self will take care of him the same way. Reluctantly, Tio agrees to go home. The moment he steps back through into 1990, young Oscar is overjoyed to see him. When his grandmother asks where he's been all this time, Tio makes up a story. Kidnapped by a gang, barely escaped. She believes it, Meanwhile, young Oscar, still devastated by Tio's disappearance, had started to accept that maybe their mother really did abandon them, and in his frustration, begins throwing out her old research books. That's when Tio finally tells him the truth, the real story, the portal, the jump to 2022. He even shows him a phone from the future as proof. Oscar's not entirely sure he believes it, but that phone is hard to argue with. The two brothers make a promise to each other, no more messing with that portal, ever again. Whatever life throws at them, they'll find a way to be happy right here, in their own present. Years pass. Now in 2022, the brothers are living together when the doorbell rings. Tio, grinning, teases Oscar. Bet that's your girlfriend Elena. He pushes Oscar to finally say what he's always been too afraid to say. Elena's divorced now. There's nothing standing in the way anymore. Truth is, Tio had deliberately kept Oscar from making a move earlier, knowing that if the two of them had gotten together too soon, Elena's kids might never have existed at all, and he'd promised never to mess with the future that way. But now, everything's already happened the way it was supposed to. Elena's kids exist. Her marriage already ended on its own. This time, there's nothing left to protect. Oscar opens the door. Elena's standing there, and that's where a whole new chapter begins for both of them. The story closes on something unexpected, pulling us back to a much older point in time, where a portal opens, and a woman steps through it. It's Tio and Oscar's mother, and that's exactly where the movie ends.